record to clap. All right, there we go. Okay, so today's meeting is about Anki. We're going to go over the basics of how to set up Anki. Hopefully we'll get through the whole presentation before my dog starts barking. So I think there's 50-50 chance. If you want to ask any questions, if you're watching this at home, feel free to head over to our website, Project Breakthrough, pbthrough.com, and people there will be able to help you and guide you through the process if you get confused in anything that we cover. So Anki. So first of all, though, our disclosures, we have absolutely no affiliation with Anki other than being users ourselves. Both of the founders, myself and Dr. Tahir, used Anki extensively in med school. We didn't use it as pre-meds, but I wish I had used it as a pre-med. I think it would have helped me a lot preparing for the MCAT. We gain no benefit from anybody out there using Anki other than hoping that y'all do well on your exams. And of course, we can't guarantee that Anki is the right solution for you. It works for a lot of people, but it might not be ideal for your situation. So you got to kind of play with it, see if it works. So Anki is not us just saying, hey, use Anki, you'll do well. There's actually been research into Anki, and that research has shown that this is an effective studying system. The first research link there, I'm going to include all these links into our YouTube description so you can read yourself the methodology and so on. But the first link there talks about how med students, when they were taking their first licensing exam, for every for the more cards they saw, they got higher scores. And then our second link here shows that it starts to put a number on that. They showed that you could do 1,700 questions that correlated to a 1-point increase on your step 1 score. And then I have a feeling that it's a greater increase, of course, for the levels, the level 1, level 2, level 3, so on. And then the last link there is actually a PDF where a psychology professor gives some tips on how to utilize flashcard systems to maximize learning. So we think all three of those would be useful. So what is Anki? Before I jumped into the research, but let's step back for a second and talk about what Anki is. So Anki is a free and open source flashcard program that uses spaced repetition to help build long-lasting memorization. It isn't like you write up your own deck and you flip through all your cards, because Anki learns what you're having difficulty with, and it sets those cards that you're having difficulty with up to be seen more frequently. The simple way to look at it is that it's virtual flashcards built-in repetition, and that it's doing kind of the thinking about what you need more work on in the background, so you don't have to do it. So how to set up Anki? I'm gonna take this from the viewpoint that you're a complete novice user and you haven't done anything with Anki, and this is your first introduction to it. So first thing you got to do is download it, and there's you can download it onto the PC, you can download it onto your like iPhone. I think there's an Android app for it also. And what you do is you create a profile on their website, and the profile follows you from device to device. So it after you go through your cards, you synchronize it. So there's a button that says synchronize. It'll update it on the Anki website, and then if you switch devices, it'll keep track of your progress. So again, let me step back a bit. First, you got to download it. Second, you got to create a profile. Third, you got to make sure it's on every device you want it on. The iPhone app cost $25, and it was probably the best $25 I spent on any learning resource. No, not probably. It absolutely was the best $25 I spent on any learning resource in medical school. So I recommend it. And I'm not a person who spends any money on apps. I'm very cheap. I always buy the the premium version I never buy. Always the light version of things. But this was well worth it. Then after you download it, you install it on your computer, you'll have a blank profile. Where do you go from there? So you got to get some decks. Now, I approached Anki initially like I approached my flashcards. I said, you know what, I like to write out flashcards. I'll write out my own cards based off what we're studying. And that was such a rookie mistake. What you want to do is you want to find and download pre-built Anki decks. And there's a couple of sources for those decks. The Anki web, the same place you, going back, same place you download the Anki program, has their own database of shared decks. And as you get into studying, if you do want to create your own deck or you do want to modify a deck that's already out there, you can contribute. You can add your own shared deck to the database too. But in the beginning, I recommend not doing that. I recommend looking for a pre-built deck. Another place is Reddit. Reddit is a fantastic source. The work of screening decks and seeing what's high yield and what's not high yield and what's overboard is done by the people on Reddit already, and you can really just kind of follow that and see what everybody else likes. On our website, we're starting to build a collection of really high yield curated decks that really help for MCAT. And soon we're going to start building up some step 1, level 1, step 2, level 2 decks too. So setting up your Anki deck. So you have Anki, you download Anki, now you have the deck. You when you get the deck, it'll come and it'll be downloaded as an APKG file on your desktop. You double click on that file and it will automatically put it into your Anki program. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to pause there. So we've gone over a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to recap real quick. To get Anki, go to the website. Go back up a page, screens, apps.ankiweb.net. If you just Google Anki download, it'll take you there. Next, build a profile. Then step 3, find your deck. Then download the deck, install the deck, and now we're here. Now you've got a huge deck in whatever. You can find them for all sorts of things. You can find decks in physics formulas. You can find them in sociology, psychology, biology, you name it. There's every MCAT subject has decks out there. Now, you have all the tools. Where do you go from there? You have to use them effectively now. So the way to effectively use Anki is to do it every single day without fail. If you fall behind, the cards you have to review will build up. And I'll talk about the whole review thing in just a moment. But you don't want that situation. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to do like 400 reviews because it's demotivating and it gets pretty daunting. So my advice is don't fall behind. Don't worry about perfect memorization in your first pass. That's not the goal. Just see the card, familiarize yourself with the concept, and it'll come back around again. And each time it comes back around, it'll become more and more intuitive to the point where you'll see the card for like the 4th pass or the 5th pass, and you're like, oh, I know that. And you'll hit the button that'll push it back for months. And find a good pace that fits your review into your daily schedule. What I like to do on the wards is, I'll go see my patients for the day, and I'll go back and I'll write my notes. But there's periods of time where I'm waiting for calls. I'm waiting for consults to call me, or I'm waiting for the rest of my team to finish, or I'm waiting for, we're going through stuff and there's a pause for some reason, there's a page, whatever, right? And I'll just whip out my phone real quick and I'll go through a couple of Anki cards. So I just fit it into little spaces of time during the day, and it works wonderfully that way. I recommend starting at a low number, like 10 to 15 cards, and moving up from there is a good way to start. The max I was doing when I was in purely dedicated studying mode for my level 2 was couple hundred new cards a day and several hundred reviews a day. But that's not where you want to start at all. You want to work up to that, and you want to only be doing that if you don't have other stuff going on. So I have some links here. These will be shared in our, both on the website, pb3.com, and in the video on YouTube. But there's this individual, Anki. You can search for him on YouTube, and he goes through how to set up recommended settings for the spaced repetition. I found that's the most confusing thing. Getting your settings for spaced repetition set up so it makes sense, and it's not like these massive gaps in time is really, really important. Because as you're going through your decks, you'll have options. When you see a card, you hit like the button, or you tap the screen if you're on the phone, and it will show you the answer, right? So it'll be like, how do you calculate cardiac output, right? And you think to yourself, that's stroke volume times heart rate, right? And so that pops up, stroke volume times heart rate. And you're like, oh, I know that. So you can hit easy, and depending on how you've set up your review settings, that could push it back for hours, days, weeks, even years. But let's say you get that, how do you calculate cardiac volume or cardiac output? And you're like, oh, I have no idea, stroke volume times heart rate. You're like, oh, I really need to know that. You can tap hard instead of easy on Anki, and it will reappear in just a couple of minutes. So you can see it again during your review. Then you get back to it again. You're like, oh, it's heart rate times something. And then you tap it, stroke volume. Okay, I'm getting it, but I don't have it all the way there. So now you hit it. All right, I want to see it in like 15 minutes. So you hit instead of easy, now you tap like medium or good or whatever. And you see it again. And you just go through this process until you're like, okay, I know that. Then you hit hard, and now it'll push it to maybe a couple of days, or it'll push it to a day, depending on how you set up your settings. And so you'll see it maybe in 3 days from now, or see it in a day from now. And that's kind of how these repetition settings work. So that's half the battle. I like to see my cards a lot, so I go in and I set my recommended settings to the minimum. Like I'll make it so I see them every couple of days, which really increases the volume of repeats that you're seeing, the reviews that you're doing. But for things like medicine, I think it's necessary, or you forget too much. There's too much material, you'll forget things. Okay, moving on. So right at the end, here's some tips. Definitely explore different decks. You want to go out and you want to see what people have created, and you want to find the right deck for you. However, don't spend too much time exploring different decks. There's definitely decision paralysis. There's so many good decks out there. You can easily go through all of them and waste all this time. Find something that feels like it has the right material and go for it. That's what I recommend. Do work on your cards every day. Do play with the settings to get the best balance for your reviews. Don't create your own decks is what I would recommend. Take a deck that's a solid deck and then add to it, because you have the option to add new cards. It'll be down in when you have Anki open, you'll have this option that says add cards. Let's see. Joanne, is it still on my PowerPoint, or does it have Anki open right now?
It's just on your PowerPoint.
Okay.
I don't see Anki.
All right, I'm going to describe this then. So you'll have if you have Anki open, you click on more, there's an option that says, oh, no, I'm sorry. Up at the top, there's an option that says add. So if you click add, you can create your own card. So this is really, really helpful if you are taking a class and the teacher said, make sure you know this formula. This is going to be on the exam. You can add that formula into your Anki deck. You're definitely reviewing it. It's really good if you are doing problems, which I recommend. Anki is not a replacement for doing actual problems and doing problem solving. But if you're doing problems, you can create a card that says, okay, you have this variable, this variable, this variable. What do you do with that? and it can kind of guide you through the logic in a way that you understand because you've created that card and you've done the problem. So definitely add to other people's decks cards that are going to help you. Do ask for advice, tips, and recommendations on the website. There's a lot of med students on there, and I think all of them are using Anki. So everybody's an Anki pro. Don't skip days because the repeats add up. Some of the larger medical review decks will have thousands and thousands of cards. And if you're doing like what I was doing, a couple hundred a day, I mean, those add up really, really fast. You'll get up to like 2,000 reviews and you're like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get through them all? Okay, so that's everything. I'm going to stop the recording now. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to visit the website, message any of us, and or comment in the video below, and we'll try to help you out. All right, good luck. Okay, let's see.